One person waiting, and thank you so much for waiting. Oh my gosh, you're the best. My name is Amelie, and you are watching Scholastic Intelligence, and I am streaming from a hospital bathroom. So it was the only quiet place I can get to really quickly. But I want to talk today about St. Teresa of Avila, and I think I'm saying that right. But first and foremost, let's get introductions out of the way. I am Amelie, and this is Scholastic Intelligence Podcast. This is episode number 34 or 35. And today we're going to be talking about St. Teresa of Avila, and it's a really fascinating story. There's so much mirrored here in my own journey, and I think it'll be very valuable for you guys to hear her story, her message, and what she was here for. A different look to it. It's a different frontier that I'm on. Mike, look at you, got #1 fan badge. Good to see. Let me know if that's better. I just hooked up to their Wi-Fi. Better? Okay, perfect. Well, I can't fix that, but we can continue on, and I can still continue to deliver the stream today. So, first and foremost, I have started a campaign to end toxic workplace culture. I've developed a program, and the most beautiful thing is last Friday, I had a meeting with my mentor. I've known her for over 20 years now. Well, it's been 20 years, I should say. I met her in one of my college career success classes. It was one of the first classes that I took as a college student. What up? Look, Tay, you've got #2. It's one of my mentors. So she was one of my instructors from that course, and she has her master's in adult education. She was obviously an instructor. She had a passion for it, and she got her master's in adult education, and she's taken a number of leadership courses, leadership and development courses. And so I had reached out to her and asked her to look over my program and tell me what she thought. And her feedback was that it was like she's taken hundreds of courses, and my course replicated 2 of her favorite courses that she's had, 76. So that was really awesome to get that kind of endorsement. So expect more from that. I'm going to be meeting with her again tomorrow. But my course is amazing. It's called Nervous System First Leadership. Now, if you've had bosses that have been reactive, have put you down, or maybe didn't recognize you, or even may have dismissed or silenced or censored you, or made you to feel alone in the workplace, or excluded from the workplace, like you don't belong. It doesn't matter if you're a minority or majority. I am in the grabber. No, I'm not. My uncle is sick, so this is the quiet place that I could be. So if that is something that interests you and that that you want to hear more about, how are we ending the toxic workplace culture, then please let me know. All right. So let's talk about Teresa of Avila. So she was born in, let me find my notes here. She was born in 1515, so she was born in the 16th century. And she was born in Spain. Yeah, well, they don't have to be nice. It's fine. They can say whatever they want. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm doing what I can. So she was born in a Let's get her here. Her story's beautiful. I've been reading her book, The Internal Castle, I think, and it's available. And once I complete this, I'm going to put a link of that book. It's available on PDF. It was written in 1588, so it's public domain. But so she was born in 1515. She's considered a mystic. She was a Catholic nun, and she was actually, it's kind of an amazing story, because we don't hear a lot about like these really great women of the past. So she was a Spanish mystic. She was a writer. She wrote several books, and she was truly a reformer. In fact, in 1970, she was called the Doctor of the Church, because she was able to diagnose issues of the system where they were kind of going a little wayward, and bring it back to the fact that spiritual needs are great. Let's see. Hi Brandon. Hi Ambiguous Mystery. Hi Random Sports Stuff. Good to see you guys. So her life is very eclectic. For being a woman in the 16th century, this is kind of a really big thing. And some of the things that she encountered in her life and the changes that she made and the convents that she started were really interesting. And so we're just going to be looking at like the parallels of that situation to today. Now, she was definitely an intellect. She was very practical. She had her young time. She was born to a very noble family, and she joined the convent when she was 20, despite her father saying, don't do that. So she did it just because she knew that's where she wanted to go. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about her is she had this ecstatic vision. She was very ecstatic in that she would go in and out of these really interesting mystical connections. And there's a little bit of rebellion in her story in that she spoke truth to power to these factions of the Roman Catholic Church at the time of, that's not how we should behave. We should be, we're devout, God-loving, God-fearing people. So she's one of the great doctors of the church, which is not a title they give out willy-nilly. This is definitely a handful of saints hold this title. And so when we're looking at what her life impacted, it's going to be really interesting. And there's reasons why I bring her up, just because I want her story to be told. I want you guys to understand kind of how mystics can really be helpful and present in our society to help solve and remedy some of the things that make our world a little kind of chaotic. So like I said, she was born to this prominent family, and she had a lot of imagination. She ran away with her brothers to go find martyrdom with the Moors. So early on, she's just championing these thoughts and ideas, and even convinced her brother to go run away. She fell ill. In fact, many times in her life, she fell ill, and in those times, she actually would be even more devotional. Early on in her books, she was very devoted to reading her books when she was sick, and that fed some spiritual longing that she had, and it kind of gave her this like knightly, chivalrous view of God. And so that is something that from her teenage years she was able to kind of carry on throughout her life. Now, when she entered the Carmelite convent, she was a little bit around 20, and at first she had struggled with how worldly it was. It wasn't as the devout nature that she wanted. It was like it wasn't containing the traditions of something that she needed to hold. She wanted that devout place to go where the world wasn't there. It was very much a spiritual place. And now I can relate to that in when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was going from church to church, really looking for something that was beyond the world. And that's kind of what I was met with, and many people can share these sentiments that when you go into a modern church during this church age, that there's a lot of modern elements to it that make it a worldly atmosphere versus the disciplined atmosphere that you might that you might be looking for spiritually in those locations. Now, here's the other thing that's really interesting. So I'm 41. I'll be 42 this year. But she had this really interesting, profound conversion in her 40s. And it's really funny. Like, the parallels here are crazy. So she set out in her 40s to reform the Carmelite order. Okay. She wanted to return it to that simplistic poverty and contemplative focus, kind of like monk status, is what she was looking for. And it wasn't until she was in her 40s, so this is 20 years into her being in the convent and, being a part of that, but she just knew that something needed to change in that system. And so she had this conversion experience that just put that in her heart, and that's what she went out to do. So she founded the Discalced Carmelites, which means the people that would wear the sandals, or if you think of monks, just wearing, being barefoot or wearing sandals, which was a symbol of humility. And that humility is something that she was looking for, and then also of this detachment from the world, because when you are entering a space of spirituality, you do want this sense of detachment from the world, because you want it just centered around spirituality. You just want to know the spiritual truths in that and not have the world be kind of tempting you out of that. So she traveled across Spain, and she founded all of these new convents that actually caused a lot of opposition from not just the clergy, not just the religious institution, but also from the political institution. Now, for me, ending toxic workplaces, a lot of people might... I don't know how it's going to be met with, but I can imagine that if you're trying to take down and dismantle an order that is currently there, that in dismantling that, there's going to be some opposition, either from the business world. In my circumstance, like in her circumstances, it's these religious institutions, these political institutions, and then even with my one little voice, sitting in a hospital bathroom while my uncle is on his deathbed in the hospital, I'm still sitting here and telling you that, hey, there is a better way that we can have our business institutions. And then even in repairing that business institution, that same method can be applied fractally throughout all different styles of, interaction with others. All right, so that's some of her religious vocation. So she was a nun, or she was part of the Carmelite convent, and then also she was very much a piece of reforming. So she was a part of this really intense reformation, which when you look at the end workplace toxic workplace culture, that is a reformation. It is not dismantling the system. It is just bringing it back to something that actually works. Like, this is what we want. We don't want to go into workplaces that have psychologically unsafe working conditions, meaning you shouldn't feel excluded from your job just because your opinions are different or just because you operate in a different way. Like, your thoughts, your ideas, they matter. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting, and where I align with it most is her mysticism and teachings. So Teresa experienced a lot of visions. She experienced a lot of ecstasies, meaning like she was enraptured. And then she experienced locutions as well. So when we when we actually look at her life, she was very practical, and she was very disciplined in the things that as she was presenting herself. But like, she would get swept away in these visions and ecstasies, and to some people they were like, what's going on? Or, oh my gosh, that's amazing, right? So there's this different reaction that the public might have, or maybe even the members of the clergy might have had with those things. Her most famous work is the one I'm reading right now. It's called The Interior Castle. It was written in 1577. She actually, like, it took 6 months to write it, but there was a period of time where she was ill. So she had a lot of illness going on in her life. And so she wrote the first part of it in a fortnight, so that's 14 days. And then the second in another fortnight in October or November. So it was a total of 4 weeks that she wrote this book. It is available online on PDF if you guys want to take a look at it. And it is free to the public domain. So if you want to take a look at that, maybe I'll read it for you guys. Put it on YouTube. So the most famous work, The Interior Castle, what is it about? It's about the soul's journey into divine union. And the soul's journey into divine union, meaning when you're able to meet with God in your soul. So she envisions your interior castle as a diamond that's uncut, or a crystal that's uncut. And then eventually you have like all these many rooms in this interior castle, or this interior mansion, which is interesting because when I developed Sovereign Queendom, my course for women, to write out their 10 sovereign law decrees, I use this idea of a castle as being the piece of where you connect with yourself there. And so there's a lot of practical application in this. Like, I hadn't learned about her in this fashion. And I know Audible. If you have Audible, I think it might be on there. But the idea of having this beautiful light within that castle shine through the crystal. So if you've ever seen light shine through a crystal, it's really cool because you get this beautiful prismatic. You've got all these beautiful colors. Or a diamond, you can imagine just the light shining off of a diamond. It's very sparkly, very beautiful. And so she is imagining your soul as being that shiny, like God as a light, that sun within you that's shining outwardly. And any sins that you do are kind of darkening that. So it dampens that beautiful light that you can be expressing, that people are actually really magnetized towards. So I can only imagine her, if she was, writing about this, how much she shone in her own life, like being this brilliant light that people are magnetized towards, and just the kindness of her heart, and then the earnesty of her wanting to do these reformations. So she describes the soul like a castle with many rooms, okay? A crystal castle. And then she through prayer and detachment, humility, and love, the soul moves inward toward the center where God dwells. So, you start by maybe crossing through the gate into the castle, and then eventually you kind of get deeper and deeper into where God is. And that's where when you're in that meeting room that she would have these ecstasies and these visions and that connection. And then her stages of prayer, so she has, very clear stages of prayer. This is how you do it. This is how you get towards that inner divine union. Is her stages of prayer move from like a vocal prayer to a mystical union. Now, a mystical union is very interesting. It's like if you've ever seen a couple, like a married couple, and it's like they both know what each other are saying without even saying anything, that's a mystical union. They become one person because they're entwined together, they're entangled in this mystical union. So when you think about mystical unions, it's like the marriage of two becoming one, and or even the bridegroom, which is known as Christ, and the bride, which is, us humans, whomever is part of that bride, entwine together in a mystical union. So she is looking at prayer as a method of connecting with that, and then completely surrendering and having this oneness with God. And that is really what the interior castle is all about. She also wrote other books, and she wrote The Way of Perfection, she didn't write these for men. She wrote these for her sisters in the convents as a way of helping guide them. So she thought through deep prayer and communal love that she could help them achieve that deep connection that she had with God. So she was also known for her personality. She was known for her wit, warmth, and unshakable will. So she was very strong, very warm, and very witty. She was very charming. She was able to, communicate very well with those around her. She would charm kings, and she was also witty enough to sit there and argue with the theologians. Obviously, she had to have some of that fervor within her in order to have these, really kind of interesting debates or arguments with theologians that were, saying, okay, this is the way things have always been. And now she's coming in and she's like, well, we don't always have to do it that way. We can do it a different way. And we can return to this really, this important way that the convents are set up. So she combined her fierce personality. So she had this really fierce, practicality with, this is her personality. She combined that fierce practicality with her ecstatic mysticism, meaning that vision, that connection, that God connection that she has. Now, I don't know if you guys here have ever had those experiences, but they're very... because it's not normalized in our society, it can kind of be looked down upon. And then, there are some events where you're like, what are they doing? Because it seems impractical or weird, or, it's just a little bit out there. Like, it's different because it's not normalized within our society. So, maybe she would hum or growl or, have these vocal expressions that were odd in, certain circumstances. And that's kind of what this ecstatic mysticism is all about. Ecstatic. So, in some reports of her, there's like this idea of her like sweeping a floor on one moment and then just being caught up in a vision or caught up in this ecstatic connection in the next moment. And then just a little bit about her legacy. She was canonized in 1622, and then she was named a doctor of the church in the 1970s. So those two things really added to her legacy. And that doctor of the church is when she was named in 1970. And if you look at pictures of her, the saints, they all have that aura around their head, and then they're, doing something, holding their hand. So her images would be like an arrow through the heart, or maybe even holding a book and a quill, just signifying her as a saint. The heart pierced with an arrow is signifying, is a symbology of a divine love, which is kind of the image that I picked up. So she is beloved by seekers who are looking for divine union. They want this deep connection with the divine. So anybody who's seeking that, reading about St. Teresa's, in her writings and her guidance into that is very, very helpful, because she was definitely known for that. If you're kind of living in the world's chaos and you're like, I have no idea if I even want to be a part of this, and you're like kind of soul questioning and soul journeying of like, where am I going? What am I doing? You might be longing for a deep union with the divine order, which is completely understandable. I do it all the time. It's constant. She will resonate with you because you will also value this beautiful mystical experience that you can have in this beautiful human body. And then also you might resonate with her disciplined practicality, just of her being really down to earth and really wanting deep reformation, knowing what she wanted in this world and what she wanted in the next world. What she truly found valuable was her mystical experience with God, and then doing work in service to Him. And then you might also resonate with this because you like rebellion a little bit. There's this holy rebellion about her where, the Carmelites were very worldly, and she was like, nope, that's just not okay. I'm not okay with that anymore. And, she drew up arms, drew up her quill, and did everything that she could to defy the religion that had just kind of become really shallow and superficial. And because she wanted to protect and also promote a deeper truth of, what is important to her, what she knew about the system that was in place at the time. So if I'm looking at it from my perspective, I'm looking at it like, all of the programs that I'm developing are there to help define the system. The digital age that I'm working on, the series investigation that I've been championing for, the better half of the year, these are all methods of how do we fight the system and fight it with precision, because I don't have time to mess around. I don't like it when I see pain everywhere. I can feel it in my body. I don't want that to be a norm, and so I'm using my voice, whether on paper or whether, outrightly with my actual voice, of sharing this and piercing it through the cloudiness that it is, because even just one person's voice sends a ripple. There's a ripple effect. All right. So that's kind of a brief overview of St. Teresa of Avila. And, she was raised in a religious household, and, we kind of discussed that a little bit. She had this instinct for this divine connection from her childhood. But, when she was younger, she also had this love of romance, beauty, and a little bit of worldly admiration. And she struggled with that halfway life of, being of the world, being in the world and not of it, like really truly understanding what that means from a soul level. Like, how are we going to be in the world and not of it? And I can definitely resonate with her path there. And I think a lot of other people may do that too. If you're, deeply inwardly seeking something more within your own soul, like this story is going to resonate with you, where you're like, I remember when I was when I was a young adult, I would go out and party hard, and everything was on the table. I was just like, I'm just gonna go out and do whatever. And then there came a point in that where I'm like, this is going nowhere. It's hurting me more than it's helping me, and I just need to like pull away. So I would be out in the world, and then I would pull away, and I would be like nose deep in a Bible, reading Bible stories nonstop, and like listening to gospel music, or listening to classical music, and really like diving into that. And then there would come a point in time where I'm like, nope, and I'd get sucked back into this worldly endeavor and do that for a period of time, and then like back and forth. And I did that halfway life for a long time. And I'm grateful that I did, even though, I wish I wasn't as troubled as I was as a young lady. But, I had this really deep pain that I didn't even know how to name it at the time. And so the halfway life, I could really understand that. The halfway life also has this like lax rules, people gossip, and her halfway life was actually being in the convents where people are doing these things. They're gossiping, the rules aren't really enforced, and they had a lot of visitors coming and visiting the nuns, or the sisters, when she was like, we should be in deep prayer. So she's like, we should be behaving in this way, but we're not. We're behaving in this way. And there was something wrong with that. As far as her system and the way that she saw it, she's like, this isn't right. Now, for me, if I was going to, I'm looking at my own parallels of my life with her. And even when I was young, I was still very spiritually attuned, and I always have been. I've always enjoyed this mystical side of life, just knowing I was yearning for this mystical thing, but I couldn't say it when I was younger. And I also appreciated the beauty of life. Like, I love good food, I love good drinks, I love seeing beautiful things. I'm very much aesthetically leaning towards nice things. And I love looking at the beauty of life and the richness of life as well. And so I can definitely resonate with her life in that respect. And, like I said, I was kind of moving in and out of this place of spirituality, and then into places where there's no rules, and just really playing with the polarity of the world and of the spirit, and balancing those back and forth. But, as I was saying, I knew that in both of those things, something was missing. Even when I was in the Bible, I'm like, I'm missing something. I want to see it. What is the thing that I'm looking for? God, give me the wisdom to see what it is I'm looking for. There's this deep ache for finding something that's real, finding something that is deep and meaningful. Now, with Teresa, she experienced quite a bit of illness and awakening and opposition. So, her severe illnesses almost killed her, and there were multiple times where it almost killed her. She had prolonged periods of weakness. Even in writing the book, The Interior Castle, she was experiencing this weakness, this illness, which caused her to be weak, which had her stop writing and then start it back up 5 months later. And because of her weakness, she also had this time of solitude and of visions, and I've definitely had those. But in her 40s, she had this profound awakening, right? She transformed her prayer from duty to this burning love affair with God, which made her story so interesting. So because of that, she launched this huge Reformation campaign. She launched her own Reformation campaign within the Catholic Church, within the Carmelite convent. And she definitely was fluffing some feathers, let's just say that. She had this newfound clarity of what this Reformation might look like, and also the resistance from the church authorities and some of her own sisters who were like, this is not what we want to do. We want to keep things going the way that it is. But she knew that there was a lot more deeper meaning that they could have by, going the distance. Now, if I look back at my life, I didn't have these, significant illnesses or physical infirmities, but I have had the soul experiences of illnesses. Just, when you get into these experiences where you're like, you almost have to be really still and quiet and let the soul heal before you see what the thing is that you need to listen to. It has a way of just pausing you. So any illness is just a moment, is just your body saying, hey, you gotta slow down and pause and wait, and then really look and see, what am I missing here? I always think, I don't know if there's any scientific information that supports it, but I definitely do believe that the human body, whenever it's undergoing an illness, is burning off this, it's burning something off. It's burning off some dead wood within inside yourself. So I think of it as if you're getting a fever, it's your body's response to burning things that don't need to be in there. It's a healthy response for your body to do that. So, we can look at it like that. And also my conversion moments have shifted from simply just believing something to actually embodying it. So the things that I believe, I also have to embody. So if I'm saying, nervous system first regulation, I believe that is the way to really heal a lot of this toxic workplace culture. But I also have to embody it. I also have to be able to have those difficult conversations. I also need to be able to speak up. Otherwise, I have no medicine to deliver to the people that are out here hearing me. And this goes for anybody that is in a coaching space, in a leadership position, anybody that's training anybody, even leaders of religious institutions, even our own political leaders. They also have to be able to carry that message of holding a certain amount of integrity of what am I saying? Does my voice and my what I'm saying match the actions that I have as well? So, in my own reformation of calling out and wanting and deeply desiring to end toxic workplace culture, I'm doing it from a place of embodiment where I've seen it, and I also have to hold that in order to teach that to other leaders, to teach that to other people that are like, I want to know what your medicine is. I want a part of that. And so it does mean like calling out the shallow system and dismantling it a little bit and saying, you know what, these methods aren't working. These models aren't working. We have to take it out and replace it with something that does work. And so I'm not sitting here pulling down a whole system and leaving it in rubble. I'm pulling down a system and then I'm repairing it with things that do work, with things that do hold weight, that do hold scientific evidence that they do work. Whereas some of the models and some of the systems that I'm looking at are grossly unhealed because they are using these models that just don't work. They just don't work. And so there's going to be a lot of people that are out there that want to be comfortable, they don't want to dismantle the system. They're very happy where they're at. And they might be some of the problem people that they don't want to change themselves. They don't want to treat other people equitably. They don't want to include other people. And that they want to just keep going because that's the way that it's always been. It's like having a teacher that has tenure and then all of a sudden, like, they hit their 10-year and then after that, there's like, I don't give a fuck about anything. Like, I'm not losing nothing. Those teachers, if they have that attitude, they're infecting the whole bunch. They're infecting all their... I've had very terrible teachers that had tenure, and it didn't matter anything that was said to them. They didn't care. They're just like, I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm getting my pension, and beyond that, I can give two shakes of whatever. I don't care about the needs of my students or the impact that I'm leaving. So this is a very real thing. Now, moving on, Teresa's vision, reform, and her building something that was unshakable is very powerful. It's a very powerful position. So she refused to accept this sterile convent life and then founded a new reformed convent. So she restored, they were very lax on the discipline. She restored the discipline in them. She restored the contemplative depth. She wanted to keep going, like, we need to keep digging and keep going. And she traveled across the country relentlessly, starting new convents and being really she was really guided by these visions and locutions. And she always was very, like I said, she was very charming and witty and well-spoken. So she was able to keep a really nice sense of humor as she was, going and doing this really deep reformation that she saw was needed. So, she was guided. She had this beautiful warmth about her as well that helped her win many allies among her critics. So the people that were criticizing her, when they met with her and they really got a feel for who she was because of her presence, because of her magnetism and the connection that she had in her ecstatic experiences, it took them by surprise. And I like to think of, King Solomon, when Sheba came to meet with King Solomon, she was very, I don't want to say humored, but she was very impressed by his wisdom. And so I can only imagine, like, her wit and her warmth and her presence being, how her interior was, how her internal world was, just was very impressive to even her critics. And so she was able to write the interior castle because of that. She was able to change the minds of the people that were criticizing her or resistant to the change that she was, wanting to provide, which wasn't even really a change. It was just doing the thing that was originally set up. It wasn't adding anything new. It was just calling the system out for stepping away from its main mission. That's all she was doing. Is we stepped outside of our mission. We need to return back to the mission. Now, when I say end toxic workplace culture, what I'm speaking is we've stepped outside of what the true meaning of having these, business set up, how that operates. We've stepped outside of that and kind of normalized this lazy and broken system. The way that you know that it's broken is you have people that are burnt out. You have people that are discriminated against, that are harassed against. It doesn't matter if you're minority or majority. Like, everybody is affected by this horrible workplace culture that we have right now. And that's where a lot of people are trying to bandage and patch it with bubble gum, but what you need is to take bits and pieces out of it and put in some really sturdy methods to keep it from breaking apart. Because right now people are breaking apart. There's a lot of things that go into the poor mental health crisis that we're under. And this is just one of them. This is just one of the foundations. And it's just one of the places where I'm I have to start somewhere. And I'm going to start here because this literally makes me sick to think that I might have to go back to work for somebody. And so I'm going to do something about speaking up about it. And I'm using my voice as a voice to speak for the millions of people that are afraid to speak for themselves, that are afraid to say something because they're going to lose their job and then lose their house and lose their access to resources. So, in looking at her vision and her reformation plan and, building this really unshakable vision that she had, in a similar sense, I'm also doing that kind of thing as well, where I'm taking these beautiful sovereignty frameworks and I'm putting it into programs that make sense. Just looking from a scientific basis of how our bodies work and how we assess difficult or foreign things that are coming into our perception. We have one of two responses. We can be in a survival state, which is what most people are in right now because everyone is stressed out, everyone's cortisol heavy, and there's not a lot of programs that are really addressing what I'm talking about. So, a lot of people may not even retain the information that they're in because they're in a stressed out, cortisol heavy work environment. Now I have to go and do this thing and it's not going to help me. It's just going to stress me out even more and cause more problems. Or even the training models that they're using are just proven not to work. And, instead of reforming it from the inside and changing the way that we deliver that method and that model, what they have done and what I've seen they've done is they just PR renamed everything, and they're just doing the same method but with a different lipstick on it, the pig, right? So I'm taking actual scientific studies and applying it into my leadership program. The other thing that I'm doing is really pulling people back into looking at what my soul matters, because as our whole body we have sovereignty. Our whole body we have sovereignty, we have agency, we have authority within ourselves. And it's become even more apparent over this last week of how important having your own consent, being aware of it, being conscious of what you're consenting to, what you're allowing into your system, what you're allowing, where you're allowing your agency to go, where you're allowing your authority to go. So if somebody is manipulating, coercing you, or trying to somehow interfere with your voice, your vocal expression of consent, don't care what it is, you do this or else you lose your job, right? That's a threat, and that removes consent from you. And if that's happening in the workplace, that's abuse, okay? So I'm pulling you back from being in this manipulative, coercive environment, and reminding you to remember your sovereignty, to remember your agency, to remember your voice, and remember that saying no is okay. And like in my campaign, normalizing saying no to things and being reasonable about it. It's not like, no, I'm not going to do what you're going to say. You're my boss, but you kind of suck or whatever. I'm not saying it from that position. What I'm saying is, if you're going to say no, you say it with integrity and dignity. I'd really like to help you on that project, Bob, but I don't have the time for that right now. Like within my amount of work that I do every week, I don't have time to put that in there. I don't have time for it. Do you think there's something on my plate that can be given to somebody else? And then I'd be happy to take that project on, but that's going to cost this much time, and let's look at my workload and see what I can remove, right? We're doing it with integrity. We're doing it with clarity. We're doing it with vocal expression. I'd really love to help you, but I don't have the hours to do it. Is there somebody else that can do it? Or is there somebody else that can take something off of my plate so that I can put it into my week? That's soul first living, okay? Right now we live in an age where like work, grinding, and whatever the optics are the most impressive thing, and it just isn't. It's literally killing people right now. It's killing them physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. When you end up burnt out, you're a canary in the coal mine. You're a canary in the cubicle coal mine. And the saddest thing is, from all of the statistics that I've been researching, the tech industry is the one that's hit the hardest. The people in tech get hit the hardest. And from what I've learned in the digital age, there's a reason why. And I'm preparing to call it out, God willing. So, I'm really just calling you out, like, let's be soul first living. It's okay to do that. In fact, it's more than okay. It's somatically important for you to have a healthy body, to have happiness in this life, to experience joy in things, not to work yourself into a grind or have the optics of a hustle that makes you a lot of money. Okay? Call it out, girl. I'm doing it. So, just like Teresa of Avila and her book, Interior Castle, I'm also mapping this inward journey that is blending this mysticism that we have, but also the structure. And I'm doing it in love. I'm not doing it because I want to burn down anything. I'm doing it because I want healing in this world. I want people to feel loved and included and belong. Okay? So Teresa feels a lot like a mirror to me, and if you're kind of in the same area that I am in, you can probably feel the same way. But we're both looking at the architecture of our own internal kingdoms, of how is that set up? How are my boundaries? Hers was this beautiful shiny crystal castle that had a light in it that sparkled when the light was expressed. And that's literally what "you are the light of the world" means. And if you have it hidden, nobody can see it. But when you have it exposed and shining and everybody's like, oh my gosh, you've got this something about you, you're magnetic, then that's where the charm comes from. Then people are like, you've got something different that I don't see every day in the world. mine is very similar. I'm like, we're building a castle inside. We're looking at our inner temple, that inner sanctuary of where we go, where our spirit came here for a purpose to really truly bring into the world something amazing. Each one of us has the capacity to do that. I don't care if it's a small thing where you just take care of your family, or if it's a big thing that you're transforming a culture or whatever it looks like. Okay? Just do something that's in alignment for you. You're going to know if your purpose is in alignment for you. When I was doing my businesses, I realized that all of these businesses that I was working on building, they were small. They weren't in alignment with me. They were small. They were looking at a small portion of this demographic, a small portion of this demographic. And I'm like, no, there's something different. Like, I have to keep on going. I have to keep on building and creating and figure out what is my purpose? What is my vision? What is the mission that I'm here for? And my mission happened to be big. It's bigger than just toxic workplaces, I'll tell you that. Toxic workplaces are just a portion of what I was meant here to do. And when you get to that point of knowing what your divine mission, your divine purpose, your divine vision is, like what you're here to do, it's exhilarating. It makes you feel alive. Now you have something that drives you every single day to get out of bed, to pop on the live streams, to speak truth to people, to pierce their hearts and their souls and remind them that they were here for something big too. And it doesn't matter what size that is. Everybody's engagement is needed. So, Teresa and I definitely have this like sacred path, a similar sacred path where we're like, we know that something's getting diluted, that something is missing from the system, that something is broken apart in the system, and we need to figure out what it is and how we're going to repair that. What is the reformation? What is the answer? And hers was to speak to the sisters and really move the Carmelite convent to something that mattered. We both share this really deep mystical reception. We want these mystical experiences. When I started Celestic Intelligence, it wasn't like I just started it with the one idea in mind of, I am so in awe of our human technology that we possess. This body is amazing. The mind, how it works, is amazing. The cognitive functions, the ability to go into different metaverse, the ability to teleport, the ability to translocate, the ability to dream. Like, these are all beautiful technologies that we have. The fact that we have this voice with language is even, like, the more that I learned about the cognitive functions, the more I'm just like, oh my gosh, my mind is blown right now of like how amazing our bodies are. How amazing we are to like have the abilities that we do. I'm simply in awe of and amazement of how intelligent and brilliant the makeup of what we're capable of, and then beyond. I don't even know all of the things that I'm capable of and that you and I are capable of. But when I started Celestic Intelligence, I'm like, that is my number one mission, of figuring out how to access visions, ecstasies, to understand what it means to be raptured, to, without any like chemical thing. Like, how do we get to these periods of getting the vision, of getting that, and how do we do it safely without breaking our minds? Because right now, minds are out there being broken. How? MK Ultra style, like, mind breaking things. Like the fact that disassociation is on the rise, which is, the new term for schizophrenic. That mental health is such, like, it's going up in numbers, double digits, double digits every year over year, particularly since the pandemic. That breaking of the mind is bothersome to me. And how does that happen? It happens with burnout. It happens when you're excluded, because there's this deep soul knowing for a lot of people that if you're excluded, that means you're going to die. Basically, you're a part of a village in the middle of the tundra, and you need that village in order to survive. But if you get excommunicated or banished out of that, and kicked out of the group, and you're on your own, chances of your survival go down dramatically. And we have this like belief system in our body that that's going to happen. Now, is it going to happen in the 21st century? Unlikely, but our brains don't know any different. Okay? So the rhythm that Teresa and I have is we have this deep mystical reception. Like, we want the divine order. We want the connection to that divine order, okay, to give us our messages. And then we take that information and we put that into a beautiful, fiery reform, some sort of action of how am I going to get this message out there, okay? And then, because we're not just tearing things down, we're not just getting a message, tearing things down and then leaving it. We're building structures that work, okay? Lasting ones that will be easy for others to walk in, okay? So yeah, hers was a little like, end the worldly, let's be a little bit more devout, let's be a little more monk-like. Mine is just saying, like, we just need to be respectful of one another, and the only way that we're going to do that is to get out of this amygdala hijack that we're all stuck under. It's very simple. See if I have any other notes. I didn't want to be on too long today, just because I am in a hospital setting. Oh, I did want to talk about one of the things that happened in her life. So some of her mystical encounters where she had these visions, these ecstasies, or the spiritual raptures, which is something that I don't think is like this one-time event like the end times guys talk about. And I take very much exception to people that believe in that. I'm like, okay, just don't. Maybe I'll share that story with you guys in another stream. So she experienced these mystical experiences in public. And so some people were very suspect of it, like, what is she doing? And some people were in awe of it. So, she had this like interesting reaction from whomever was seeing her in that. The one thing I wanted to talk about was her main thing. So one of the things that she is very well known for is there was a boy playing, and the piece of the wall fell on him, and they thought he was dead. So she held him and prayed over him and brought him to his mother, and he was well and sound. So she had this really beautiful experience where she her presence and prayer and devotion to bringing this kid back to life. Like, that's what she's known for in her sainthood. She's also known for the transverberation of the heart, which is the angel piercing her heart with a golden spear. And that helped to fill her heart with the immense love of God. And so it's intense because it's a little painful. Obviously, piercing a heart is painful, but then it's also sweet, where like it opened her heart up to be filled with this golden love of God. And so her mystical encounters, she was like, these are not just passive experiences for me. These experiences happened to compel me to do this reformation for the Carmelites. And so that's kind of a really beautiful, thing to really know about her. So she founded 17 convents and restored the poverty of the convents. So it went from maybe being a little worldly, of maybe having salt and pepper or something like that. I don't know what is considered poverty in the 16th century. But then to bring back this simplicity as well to the convents, and then also bringing back the central value of deep prayer as part of it. So these rules had very much laxed, and she was like, this isn't what, I didn't join the convent for this. I want it to be a little more less worldly and more spiritual. She was also investigated by the Inquisition. She was born in Spain, so we all know about the Spanish Inquisition, am I right? So she had some investigations done on her, and she faced quite a lot of opposition, much of which she was able to use her wit and charm and everything to even change some of her critics into her followers, or into those who were kind of supporting her cause. And obviously that happens when there's a threat to change, right? There's a change threat. People will hunker down and fight back. That survival mode mechanism definitely does kick in. And then she partnered with the St. John of the Cross to reform some of the male branches of the Carmelites as well. So, she was calling in the St. John of the Cross to help her with this Reformation mission that she, was compelled to bring in her life, which is really amazing because she, for most of the story, like, she was ill a lot of the time. She was medically ill. She, spent a lot of time bedridden, unable to get out of that. And even in writing some of her books, she had some voices in her head that made it really difficult for her to even concentrate. So it's just kind of a beautiful story to just remind us that, even with our convenience, sometimes that convenience can mar the true purpose of why we're here and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I will link the interior castle if you guys are interested in reading that. But any of her writings should be available by PDF online. You should be able to find a copy. I know that there was some programs that you can purchase that had, like, you can download it for free. And then there were like Kindle where you can buy it for like a couple dollars, but you can also just get it on PDF and be able to read that for free online. Let's see. Anything else? We talked about her getting canonized. Yeah, I think that's good. Well, I want to say thank you guys for watching this. It's been a pleasure to deliver this to you. And, you know, like I said, the book Interior Castle is available. I'm going through it right now. I think it might be a little, the way that it's set up, I don't know if I necessarily agree, but I just, you know, I'm not here to like agree with everybody and their opinions and their writings. I just want to glean the information that I want from it. And I think that just the idea of having this interior world inside of you, this interior castle or this interior mansion that has many rooms is very interesting. An interesting concept because I think a lot of people talk about this inner spirit in that same manner. Thank you for taking the time out for the stream. Of course, I'm so happy to deliver this to you guys. I should be back home next week. Unfortunately, you know, my uncle took quite a turn, and so it did divert my plans that I had of returning home. But everything is laid out, and it is, you know, how it is supposed to be, and so I'm very much okay with that. But I should be returning to my normal crazy, like let's end the workplace toxicity and all of that here soon. I just, you know, took a couple of days to really kind of parse things out here on my end. But if you are watching this right now, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you are interested in hearing more about my leadership program, which is called Nervous System First Leadership, please let me know in the comments or reach out to me. I am currently looking for 8 cohorts for my founding program, so it is going to be offered at a discount. These are something that you can bring to your workplace if you are a leader, and your workplace, if they have the budget for it, they should be able to cover it. It does categorize as an ongoing work leadership and development program. So you do get a certificate of completion, and also there's ongoing support so that anytime in the future after taking my program, you have access to the 24/7 community to talk about some of the difficult things that you have to process through as a leader, just to provide that extra support. Hi, Tyler. You missed it. I'm getting ready to go. So I hope that this has been truly valuable for you. I hope you just find that her life was very interesting, and that it does help to kind of see some of this fractal information. It's been a pleasure to, you know, dive deeper into St. Teresa's life and see, you know, kind of the things that she was going through, and then to see a lot of the similarities of her doing this Reformation in the 16th century, which might have been a little bit more difficult than doing it in the 21st century, even though a lot of people don't get up and speak up because there is this air of, you know, suppressing and silencing and censoring yourself. So you were looking your best. Thanks. Thank you. That's really nice. I've been crying a lot. That's awesome. Yeah. Just doing some grief stuff. Anyways, well, I appreciate you guys so much for showing up. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys later. Bye. Let's see if I can figure out how to end this.